Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. So far this year, I've read all the chapters from my new book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. Please do go back and watch the replay to catch up. Today, we're going to discuss the topics covered in my book. And for those of you who have already purchased your copy, please feel free to follow along, add your comments, and ask me questions arising from the content. And if you do not yet own your own copy, the links for both the Kindle and the paperback versions are featured below. All of my links are featured below. Thank you in advance for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. And I'm happy to announce that YouTube channel memberships are now available so that you can receive my perks and also so that you can help to support my channel. So again, if you enjoy my content, please do like this video, whether it's audio or a video. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. And yes, please share it with your friends. And again, like I mentioned, there are channel memberships now available. And you might want to just check them out and see if there's anything that you would like to have made possible for you. So, yeah, wow. Okay. So I've read the whole book. Well, I missed bits and pieces, but basically, when you buy it, it won't have this band across the middle. That's because this is an author's copy. And I'll just read, for those of you who aren't familiar, what the different chapters are. So I start off by talking about who influenced me, who encouraged me to write my book. Of course, that was Preston Dennett, bless his heart. There would be no book if it wasn't for his encouragement. And he's also written me a lovely review that you can find on the Amazon website. Some people are having trouble finding it on the Amazon website. And so what I recommend you do is go to the Amazon website for the country that you're in, and then click on the menu and find books or find Kindle, and click on those. And then in the subdirectory, you'll get a search bar and then type in Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, and it should pop right up for you. And if by chance it doesn't, you can always shoot me an email and I can send you the link. Oh yeah, sorry, the links are below in the description. Hi, Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. Nice to see you. He says it's impossible for us to sit down to have a coffee exactly when you're on. It happens all the time. Higher guidance is all I can say. Hey, Karen and Denise. And also from Denise, Denise says, hi, Karen. Hi, Denise. Nice to have you folks regularly come into the live chat. I always appreciate your comments and your observations, and thank you so much for being here today. Absolutely lovely. So I'm just going to read the table of contents. Chapter 1, part 1, chapter 1. It starts with clarification, where you understand exactly where I'm coming from, what the book involves and what it does not. So, for instance, I do not represent the Federation of Planets or the Pleiadians or the Secret Space Program or anything like that. And this is my own experience. It's not based on anybody else's work or anything like that. Chapter 2 is my paranormal history and my background. So, although not necessarily extraterrestrial related, I had quite a few paranormal experiences growing up. And I talk about how basically the framework I see as being how to sort of slice and dice my different experiences, the different kinds of beings that I'm able to have contact with, what that's like for me, and also the greater ramifications of contact. Part two is my actual contact experience. And Chapter 3 is an intergalactic resettlement program. So I talk all about resettlement, what's possible, what's not possible, and what's that process like? What does that look like? For those of you who are interested in that. Chapter 4 is what is ET like? So in the image that I have here, the image is AI generated. It's not a selfie, but the woman in the center represents myself, and I have two beings on either side. One looks quite a lot like us, and most of the beings aboard the big ship did indeed look quite a bit like humans. And then one on the other side who does look a little bit what we would consider a stereotypical ET, but they're all very human-like in so many ways, as you'll discover when you read my book. They all breathe air, they all eat food, they all form families, so much in common with us. The only type of beings that I found were quite different, well, not really different, but sort of different, were what I call the aquatics. Now, they're not actually in a water H2O medium, but they are in a fluid environment, and it has the same oxygen content as our atmosphere here on Earth. And I describe what they look like, how they get around, and things like that. And then I actually formed a special relationship with one of them. And at the end in chapter 8, I talk about it in great detail. Um, so, chapter 5 is Welcome to the Big Ship. And as I've described, the big ship is alive, it's conscious. It doesn't sit in any particular star system or star quadrant or galaxy. It actually sits in what I call an interdimensional envelope. So if for those of you who are not familiar with what that might mean, imagine a daisy, and then imagine that daisy as being like a Venn diagram having about 100 petals on it. Well, actually, there are more, but let's just keep it simple. And if you can imagine that each petal represents a different timeline, a different dimensional reality, a different physical location. And each one is different, but they all overlap at the center. And that would be where the big ship resides. So, because of its location, it's fairly simple for beings to immigrate and emigrate and visit and have training aboard the big ship and have these wonderful experiences with the what I call transdimensional beings. And by the way, humans are also transdimensional, and I'm going to address that a little bit later in the show today. Chapter 6 was my orientation. So, what was it like finding myself aboard the big ship? How did it happen? You know, who did I see? What did I do? What was that whole orientation period like for me? Chapter 7 is life on the big ship. So, what was life, everyday life, like on the big ship? So, I get into what we ate, foods, social activities, training, learning telepathy. That was huge, absolutely huge, because none of these beings use spoken language. It's all done with telepathy. And I'll get into that a little bit later too. Chapter 8 is love, reproduction, and sex. And so you can learn what actually is love when it comes to the ETs. As far as I'm concerned, they vibe on the love harmonic. They are extremely loving, caring, empathetic beings. And the reason they vibe on the love harmonic is because that is the only system that works. Any other system will not work. It'll end up with dualism, divisiveness, all kinds of problems. But when beings completely live according to the principles of love, which includes self-control, patience, mildness, kindness, whole bunch of attributes, then their communities not only thrive, but the successive generations or their offspring are raised in an environment where they can ensure the success of their race or family line on into the future. So it's super important and a very important lesson for us as well. I get a little bit into reproduction, and of course, there are some differences in sexual activity as uh, in contrast to how we do things here on Earth. And I'm just going to say that basically the main difference is some beings have what we would call internal genitalia that make itself available when they are wanting to have sexual relationships or reproduce, and others are much like us. And there are different kinds of sex. So, for instance, there is what I would call energetic or telepathic sex. So there's sex the old-fashioned way, and then there is sex that is done on a strictly mental state, and it involves telepathy, and you don't even need to be in the same vicinity as the other being, and you both contribute towards sort of a shared fantasy that gets the job done. Then there's also a different kind of energetic sex, which is heart to heart. And this is completely, it's not mental at all. In fact, there's no mental component to it at all. It's strictly done on with your heart torus and the combining of intention and this incredible physical experience that results. Then part 3 is about making contact. Chapter 9 is how to prepare for contact. How can you increase the likelihood of being able to have positive contact? And then chapter 10, of course, was the conclusion. And I have images that are actually AI generated within the book, but I worked very closely with AI to create these images to come as close as I could to my actual experience. And here's an image representing the big ship as it sits in that interdimensional envelope. And near the end of the book, I have actually quite a few images of my experience because, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, I think. So if you haven't done so already, they're print to order, so you could get your copy on Amazon. And then after that, I did not expect to publish this book, which is called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys picture book. But as we get closer and closer to contact, it seems that the most common beings cited are what we would call the Greys. And I felt it was important to continue to work with AI to generate the images that I could put into a book and publish so that it would reduce the fear. Because when beings that look different than us do start showing up, our natural knee-jerk reaction is to be afraid. But the problem with that is if we are afraid, we lose our critical thinking skills and we're more programmable or more easily influenced by propaganda. And so I felt it was important to produce a picture book And the first two chapters are written. The first chapter is about my own experience with what you would call ETs and what you would call the Greys and also ETs. And then the second chapter, I have 7 of my friends who are firsthand experiencers talking about their experiences with what we call the Greys. And I started that off with Dolly Saffron talking about the tall Greys, Preston Dennett, who has been a MUFON investigator for many years. He's an author. He's written and published over 30 books, and he's an expert. And he writes a bit about what he believes is true about the Greys. Then I have Nancy Thames, and Nancy is a lifelong extraterrestrial contactee with primarily the Greys. And she has started her own disclosure website to help educate people. Then I also have Philip Kinsella. Philip Kinsella and his twin brother Ronald Kinsella both contributed um, pages to this book based on their experiences with the Greys and the lifelong research that they've done. And then there's Elsa Dillon, and Elsa Dillon is also an experiencer, and she has an educational website as well. All the contact information is also in this book. And then, of course, there's Jimmy Blanchett. Jimmy Blanchett, um, he's a scientist, and he's also a ham radio operator. And Jimmy created a very powerful antenna array, and he digitizes messages, sends them out through his antenna array, bounces them either off the moon or off the sun, and sends them out into our solar system, contacting any ET beings, including the Greys that might be in our vicinity or even interdimensional within our vicinity. And he was actually given some, I want to say this properly, he was given some geometry that he then started investigating and found out that it led him to a mathematical sequence that gives us everything we need to know for transdimensional contact, travel, zero point technology. He's a fascinating, fascinating person. He's done a small documentary showing how he came in contact with the ETs and how he was given this geometry, and also about his work. So that's very, very interesting. That's the first 2 chapters of the book. And then the rest I've divided up to show you images. Now, these are not exact replicas of the Greys. The Greys actually come in many shapes and sizes and different dimensional realities. They have different agendas. The only thing they really have in common is that their skin pigment doesn't reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum. So to us, they all appear to be gray, but actually to each other, they have, I guess, rods and cones or something in their eyes that allow them to see each other actually as being in full color. So the different chapters in this book include gray males. Chapter 4 is gray females. Chapter 5 is gray children. Chapter 6 is stereotypical grays. Chapter 7 is human looking grays. Chapter 8 is human gray hybrids. And chapter 9 is what I affectionately call the Grays family photos. And so it's there, I don't know, I think they're very interesting. I don't see any of them as being at all frightening. But it does take some adjustment for us to get used to the way they look so that we're not terrified when they make their presence known here on Earth. And so I think you'd find this really interesting. There's over 250 images, and I think you'll find it very interesting, and it shows the diversity that they also offer. So that's about it for my two books. So today, again, is just kind of a recap, Q&A. I'm wondering if any of you out in the live chat have any questions or comments or anything that you want to say, and we can just take it away from there. So while I'm waiting for your comments, I'll just talk a little bit about a recent development. I don't know if you folks have heard about a podcast series. Season 1 is out. It has 10 episodes. It's called the Telepathy Tapes. And originally, the research was done with nonverbal autistic people. And they discovered through scientific experiments, not experimenting on them per se, but doing different kinds of testing. And they discovered that all nonverbal autistic people are actually highly telepathic. And from there, they discovered that they're able to have what we would consider telepathic chat rooms where they're able to communicate freely, get training, all kinds of things. Let's take a look. We got a question from Denise here. Karen, do you visit there often? No. Well, I don't know. Let me put it that way. The actual part from chapters 3 till 8 in the book, that type of visiting, no, not so much, really not so much. It seemed that it happened with a very distinct purpose in mind. I was meant to write about it, I was meant to talk about it. And then once I published my book, both books, now things have taken a little bit of a different bend. So, as I've mentioned to you before, I'm an exopolitical ambassador, which means that while I'm sleeping, I regularly find myself aboard the big ship, meeting with other beings and other people, and we discuss matters of importance regarding our situation here on Earth, and also our interrelationship with ETs and other what they call non-human intelligences, which might actually be a better description. And a lot of this, I don't remember. I know I'm there. I know I'm there because often I'll wake up and have to pee in the middle of the night. And it's like, as soon as I wake up, I'm not even fully awake, but as soon as I wake up, I clearly remember being in the meeting, the agenda, everything. But it's like I stopped being there and now I'm here. And then when I get back into bed and I go back to sleep, I stop being here and I am there. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but that's how I experience it. And I'm convinced that perhaps I go there etherically. So I also think that perhaps remote viewing, lucid dreaming, astral projection, these might actually be different facets of the same phenomenon. And I believe that's what's happening. So I was assisted back in 2020 to go back to the big ship with the assistance of Bob the Gray. That's not his real name. That's just what I call him. And I've written about that quite a bit in the book as well, if you want to know more about it. Um, but besides that, as far as I know, I'm not there, but I might be there and not remember because often our memories are suppressed. And it's for our own safety and for our own good so that we can get re-embedded into our journey here on Earth. What's really interesting about this, I'll just get back to, I just want to say hi to Infinite Consciousness. Hello, nice to see you. Glad you could join us. Um, as I mentioned, I watched the series. If you haven't done so, highly recommend it. Watching the podcast series, season 1, episodes 1 to 10, called The Telepathy Tapes. And then after that, you might want to, I shouldn't say watch, I should say listen. They're just audio podcasts. But after that, you might want to watch another series that Kai Dickens has come up with called Telepathy Talks, where she has different people with different kinds of telepathic experiences come on. What I also learned is that those people who are not autistic are also able to have telepathy with these autistic individuals. And the place where these individuals go, well, they're not physically gone, but they're telepathically someplace else, is there's two locations. One is called the Hill, and this has various so-called chat rooms which people can go to telepathically and encourage each other, teach each other. This is why so many nonverbal autistic people are actually savants, but it's because they're being taught by other autistic individuals who are in different parts of the world. And then there's also what they call night school. And this is where it overlaps with my situation. And so, those of you who don't know, I am myself autistic and I mask it fairly well. I've been practicing all my life. I'm an old lady, I'm 69 years old. When I was young, they did not diagnose it at all, and even more rarely diagnosed the condition in females. So we were heavily socialized on how to behave in public, and we learned how to mask. Masking has its costs. It's exhausting and it doesn't really help our self-esteem, but it does help us to sort of get by a little bit in the mainstream world. But the reason I'm telling you this is from my own experiences as an autistic person. It is often very much like having one foot in another reality and one foot here. So if I was a nonverbal autistic person, I may have both feet in the other world. And it appears, excuse me, it appears that these individuals are not home, but they actually are very fully conscious beyond what we ever considered possible before. And this has come out with the telepathy tapes by Kai Dickens. So I highly recommend you listen to it. It also gets into a telepathy with animals and all kinds of things. So, and this is where my experience overlaps with some of the experiences that you'll hear about in the telepathy tapes. So, when I go to another realm, I'll call it another realm, when I have transdimensional contact, it's very different than dreaming. Very, very different. Dreams are very disjointed. They don't make sense. I may not remember them. Um, it's a completely different process than when I'm having a transdimensional experience. And I've had many besides my experiences with extraterrestrials. And it always involves learning, always. So the other thing that happens to the autistic individuals that are discussed in the telepathy tapes is at night they go to a place they call night school, and they're taught things by other beings. Some are what we would call angels, some are what we would call ETs, but what they all are is non-human intelligences. Some, though, were human at one time, are not anymore. They get to meet and greet with loved ones who've passed away. It's really an incredible thing. Um, the immediate concern was that powers that be here on Earth would want to get their hands on this way of being or these so-called locations and interfere in a nefarious way. But the truth is, these realms are protected. They're divinely protected, and none of the autistic people are afraid of this being taken over or usurped by nefarious humans. And I'm very glad about that. I don't know if you guys have heard about the experiments they're doing with DMT, where the DMT is a psychedelic and it has a very short-lived experience. Although while you're high, it may seem longer. There can be time dilation, much as I describe in my book, what happened for me. And they put them on a drip so they're continuously high on DMT, and then they map where they go. And interestingly, they found out that where they go, regardless of who the individual is or what room they're in or what part of the experiment they're taking part in, they all end up in the same place. That doesn't mean this is the same place as where the autistic people are going. So I was just about fell over out of my chair when I started just a couple weeks ago listening to the telepathy tapes and realized that there's a lot of people here on Earth that are having transdimensional experiences. So I often get asked, Karen, do you get to go to the hill? And I would say maybe once or twice, but it's not a regular feature of my sleep state. And I think the reason why is if you've read my book, you'll also understand that I underwent a fair amount of trauma as a child. And I have CPTSD, and that includes sort of ruminations, thinking about what happened, trying to make sense of it, trying to put it to rest, trying to find my peace. And I think that is what interferes with me being able to go to the hill, because we can't take horrible ruminations of things that have happened to us here on earth to the hill. It would be very disturbing. So until I can keep my mind quiet, which I do work on, I meditate, and I am getting closer and closer to that nice, peaceful state all the time. But until I am able to maintain that for long periods of time, I don't think it would be a benefit to the people that are there. And I would not want to cause harm or discomfort to anybody. The same as when I go to the big ship, I have to very much restrict thoughts of my life here on Earth because it would be very disturbing to the extraterrestrial beings there. They're so peaceful and so loving, and they've adapted to a completely way of being. I think the reason I remember so much about my transdimensional experiences aboard the big ship is I was meant to share it. It's a template to show us humans what's possible. These beings are at what I would call our next stage of development. It's attainable by us when we're ready. And when we're ready, we will have way more non-human intelligence contact. We will take our place amongst a greater family that most of us never even knew existed. So I wanted to share all of that with you, and I'm just waiting to see if you have any more comments or questions to come in. Um, Getting back to this experience at night with autistic people. Okay, so this is what happened just a couple weeks ago. I'm going to talk about it on another show coming up in more detail. But basically, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I clearly remember that I was having a discussion with another being, and I was being taught as to what is the nature of autism. And it is not what we think. It's actually not a disability. It is a stepping stone into our next level of development, for lack of a better term. And these people who are autistic have so much to offer us other humans on planet Earth. What's been holding everybody back has been the misconceptions, and also there are powers that be that do not want this information discovered. So because these autistic beings, including myself, have all these transdimensional experiences, we're able to bring back great truths, secrets, ways of doing, ways of knowing things that the so-called normal people could never even imagine. And so what's going to happen, hopefully in our near future, is there are going to be places set up where autistic people, especially nonverbal autistic people, can go, and ways they can that science has come up with on ways to tap into what they know and be able to communicate with them so that the whole world can benefit from their great wisdom and knowledge. So you could think of them in some ways as being like shaman, very powerful, powerful shaman. And but anyway, so I was given all this information, and I was basically directed to go out and share it, just like I did with my transdimensional experience. And I was just kind of scratching my head, going, I wonder how I'm supposed to do that. Well, later in the day, after I was awake, I was scrolling through Facebook, and here it comes up that this was National Autistic Awareness Day, April the 2nd. And I thought, how what are the coincidences that would what is the possibility that I would have this transdimensional experience and then it turned out to be Autistic Awareness Day? And in some parts of the world, it's even Autistic Awareness Month in April. I thought, wow, that's a coincidence. Like maybe a synchronicity, maybe more than a coincidence, but it's definitely affirmation to my experience, or I should say, affirmed my experience. So then the next day after that, which would be April the 3rd, I wrote down in notes about everything I could remember from this visit. And at that point, I started to suspect that it may have been another human who was educating me, not necessarily a non-human intelligence, because it wasn't really clear to me who this being was that was teaching me, but the teaching was kind of what filled my experience. And so I wrote it all down. And then the day after that, lo and behold, the telepathy tapes, one of the podcasts comes into my feed. And I went, I've heard about this podcast, didn't really know anything about it. I thought, well, I'm going to go to the or not website, to the channel, and I'm going to start with season 1, episode 1, and see what it has to say. And it blew my mind. I only watched one episode because it gave me so much to think about. The next day, I watched another episode. It gave me so much to think about. And then after that, I, watched at least one a day until I was finished the series. And I went, oh my God, does that ever explain a lot? So then I started thinking about this being who gave me the information and my transdimensional experience that started all of this. And I have the strong feeling, I don't have a clear image, but I have the strong feeling, and I get the image of it actually being about a 6-year-old child that has dark curly hair, and they also happen to be blind. I didn't get a name, but that may have been, I'm not saying it was, but that may have been an experience of me going to the hill and being in contact with this other human, autistic, probably nonverbal person who then started my training. And then I'm left with, oh my God, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? I don't know. Am I supposed to write a book? I don't have enough information yet. And it just came to me that the information I need to know will be revealed to me when the time is right. And in the meantime, I better get used to talking about it. So, talking about it is difficult for me because I've been in the closet as to my autism all my life. First of all, because I thought I was just weird and I thought God just made me this way. And I didn't know why I was different than other people and why I didn't have the same kind of life as my brothers and my sister, or, other people that I know. I always thought I was doing something wrong. So there's a certain amount of internalized depression, a certain amount of shame and guilt around my condition. And so right now I'm working on letting that go, being me. I often stem, but you can't see me stemming. This is my little stemmy characters here. It's a little plushie of a I don't know, a shrew or a hedgehog. and I just kind of squish him, but you can't see, right? And I fold his little arms and pop them back out again. And I that's what I use when I'm doing my shows, but you can't really see it. And then I have two cats, so that's satisfying. That's interesting because my cats, I can stem by petting them and they like it. So it's kind of mutually beneficial. And yeah, so there's that too. So oh, Denise, thank you so much. She says, "We love you, Karen, just the way you are." Oh, thank you so much. So let's see. For those of you who are not familiar with my book, and this is going to be watched on the replay and also on audio podcasts that will be distributed, I hope you'll all bear with me while I do a very short promotion for my books. When I come back, I want to tell you about my telepathic experiments I did with my cats since learning that animals are also telepathic. Probably a lot of you out there know that, but I didn't really, like, I kind of thought, but I didn't really get it until I did this experiment. It's just beautiful. So I'll be right back and I will tell you all about it. Learn the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, meet the new neighbors, introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off-world mating practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. Once I published my first book, I felt the need to create a second book called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys Picture Book. I worked with AI to develop many images of beings that we have come to know of as the Greys. These beings come from many places, realms, dimensions, and timelines, and although they are of the same species as other humanoids, they are from many different family lines and races. What qualifies them as greys is that their skin does not contain the pigment necessary to reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum, so to us, they all appear to be various shades of gray. Beyond this physical attribute, there is much diversity in their origins, cultures, purposes, and physiological details. My goal is to get you used to the looks of beings which are different than humans in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy these images and notice the things we have in common so you will see that although they are different from us in appearance, we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of both books are now available on Amazon worldwide. Search the Amazon and Kindle bookstores and pick up your copies today. And we're back. So, yeah, I wanted to also mention for those of you who have read my book, whether you have won it in a contest like with Typical Skeptic, Denise, I believe that's where you got your book, or whether you've bought it or have the Kindle version, can you guys do me a really big favor? Can you go back onto Amazon and leave me a review? Because if you leave me enough reviews, my book will go out into the algorithm. So as it stands now, because it's a recent publication and because I have less than 15 reviews, when people type it in to Amazon, they don't necessarily have it come up. So it would really help me a lot if you all would go back and take the time to go back and leave me a review. I would really, really appreciate it. So, getting back to my experience with my cats and telepathy. So I have two different cats. One's a calico, and she kind of thinks she's royalty. She thinks I'm only here to do her bidding. And although I love her very much, and I know she loves me, we don't seem to have much of a telepathic connection. This is interesting. Bridget Bambrick says, yes, they are. Yeah, absolutely. Um, And thank you, Denise. She says she's going to leave me reviews on both my books. Wonderful. And Bridget says she left a review as well. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it, guys. So anyway, my other cat, no, so both my cats are rescues. I always adopt cats that have had tough lives because I figure they really need a doting old lady to spoil them. It's the least they could have, for the rest of their lives after being traumatized. So they have a few behavioral issues, but basically they're lovely. So, my Calico that I was just talking about, she always stays very close to home. I call her my old reliable because she always comes home. But she's usually, if she goes out, she doesn't go far, or in the nice weather, she's just lying out on the deck, and she's just lovely that way. I never have to worry about her. But the boy is another whole kettle of fish. And he was found by a neighbor of mine a couple of years ago. He was out in the cold. His little tail was partly frozen in his ears and his little paws, and he was starving and he was just in a terrible shape. And she took him in, but couldn't keep him because she has large dogs, and he was very, very scared of her dogs. So I said I would foster him while we looked for his owners. And of course, we never did find his owners, but we tried. And it turned out that this little guy, called him Sammy, he's not that little, but anyway, his little, compared to me, he's little. His little feet, his little nails don't retract properly because his feet were frozen, and his little tail is kind of stiff because it was frozen. But, he's in pretty good shape. So I took him to the vet and got him all taken care of, and made sure he had everything he needed, and fed him good, and he filled out, and he became a lovely cat. And I was scared to let him out, but in the springtime I let him out, and because they love it outside. I'd love to have them inside as indoor cats, 12 months of the year. 6 months out of the year, it's bitterly cold and they don't want to go out. But the other 6 months, they want to chase butterflies, and they want to eat grass, and they want to climb trees. Who can blame them? And so my heart kind of gets soft, and I go, okay, I'll let you guys out. So anyway, I let him out, and oh, the little booger, he would take off and not come back for hours and hours, and sometimes he wouldn't come back to the next day, and it really worried me. I did have him neutered. It was kind of awful thing to do to him, but I felt it was necessary. But still he takes off. And so last year I really struggled with letting him out, and I would keep him in quite a bit, and he hated it. But then we had the winter, and then this year came. And I went, oh, I really want to let you out, my boy, but I really worry about you when you take off. So then I had watched, on the telepathy tapes and on the telepathy talks, these animal communicators who swear that animals are telepathic. So I thought, well, look, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to have a little chat with Sammy. And he was so cute. He sat there. I talked to him verbally, but I also tried to project into his mind what I was saying with visuals. And he sat there. He was so good. And I said, Sammy, I love you very much. You're my special boy. But when you take off and don't come back, it scares me. I worry about you. So you could make me really, really happy if you would come back and check in with me every couple of hours so I know you're safe and I know you're okay. And it would really make me happy if you would start coming in the afternoon so I don't have to go looking for you. That would make me really happy. Would you do that for me? And it was kind of cute. The look on his face and the feeling I got was he said, yeah, yeah, I can do that. Of course, he didn't speak English. And this made me cry a little bit because it's very touching. Sorry, I'm so emotional. I don't know why, guys. So thanks for bearing with me. So, anyway, every single day since then, and this happened, like around, I don't know, maybe the end of the first week in April. is when, I started watching the telepathy tapes and realizing how big this whole telepathy thing is, right? So anyway, so now we're at the end of April. Every single day since I had that talk with him, he comes back every hour or 2 hours and he checks in with me and he lets me know that he's okay. And there's another reason why this is causing me to cry. I'll tell you in a minute. And then he started also coming in about 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he just goes to his bed and he just sleeps. Of course, he keeps me up at night because he sleeps all afternoon, but he did exactly what I needed him to do. And every single day, consistently, there's no doubt in my mind that my Sammy understood and complied with what I wanted. And it blew me away again. And the reason it makes me cry is because there's a lot of people who have pets and they're not sensitive to what their pets are going through. They're not sensitive to what their pets need. And they are just as aware as we are. They're not as screwed up as we are. They're not as complicated as we are, but they're absolutely know what they need. They know what's wrong with us. Like it's so huge. And then don't even get me thinking about all the lab animals that they experiment on. Don't even get me started on that because then I'll never get the tears to stop. But I realize that we really are a savage species as humans. Oh, Denise, thank you, Denise. Denise sends lots of love, and Denise says, "Aw," and Denise says, "I'm very sensitive to animals," and Bridget says, "So sweet." Thank you, guys. Thank you for being so kind to me and for all the thoughtful comments. I really appreciate it. So I guess what I'm saying is if those of you who have not listened to the telepathy tapes, please do. It will open up your mind so that you can understand what's possible. And then if you haven't done so already, pick up my book and it'll make a lot more sense to you, I think, if you've already listened to the telepathy tapes. And if you want to go on to listen to the telepathy talks, and it's by Kai Dickens. Kai is spelled K-Y Dickens. I highly recommend her podcasts. And she's right now working on a documentary and she's working on season 2. So I'm really looking forward to that. And Bridget says, we're the same way. I talk to my dog. Wonderful. So I'm going to be a lot more, communicate a lot more with my pets from now on. I always talk to them, but I always thought it was just kind of a weirdness that I had. I didn't expect them to understand at the level that they do actually understand. And so I really, really recommend that. And we all have the capacity for telepathy. We all can communicate with animals. We may not get clear messages right away, but if we keep at it and we do it with each other. So now I'm going back to see my grandchildren in July, and I'm actually going to see how much telepathy they're capable of and teach them about telepathy. They're only going to be 6 years old in July. They're very young still. Last time I went to see them, I taught them how to do energy healing and how to produce energy through meditation and how to create it and work with it within their hands and how to take that healing energy and to heal each other and their mom and their dad. And of course, being only 5 years old, they didn't get it perfect, but at least they were totally open to the concept and it seemed doable to them. So why not, right? So I'm going to keep working with them. We have had telepathic communication. I have in my sleep visited them, and in the morning, they've told their mom about it. And so that was pretty cool. My daughter would call me up and say, "Did you visit the kids in your sleep?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I did." And they said, "This is what they said. They said that you were in a beautiful garden with flowers." And I went, "Yeah, that's what I telepathically in my dream, in a lucid dream, that is what I shared with them." So that was pretty cool too. Um, Van Darkholm says, "By the way, welcome to the show. Could you teach us how to use telepathy and healing energy?" Yeah, actually, I can. If you want a very detailed lesson on how to do telepathy, I would highly recommend my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, because in it I talk in great detail about the training that I underwent to learn how to do telepathy. But the most important part of being able to be telepathic is your belief system. If you believe that it's possible for you, if you believe it's possible between you and a specific person or people, if you believe it's possible for you to communicate telepathically with animals, you can do that. In fact, in the telepathy tapes, which I keep going on and on about, really recommend you watch or you listen to season one. They even talk about how belief is everything. Children who are autistic, nonverbal, and their one parent doesn't believe that they're telepathic, they cannot communicate with them. But the other parent who believes they're telepathic is able to communicate with them. And yeah, so I highly recommend it. Yeah, nice to see you. Nice to see you, Van. So we're coming close to the end of the show now. As for teaching you healing, I think what I will do is write down for a future episode um, healing techniques, because it's not that hard. And again, I'll just say that we all have an energetic body. Our energy, we receive it through our left hand, which is the female side, and it goes out from us. We project it from the right hand side, which is our male side. And we're all yin and yang. We all have this flow of energy. If you do some research on the internet, you'll find tons and tons of YouTube videos about it and all kinds of things. So, because we already have that energy, if we go within ourselves and we meditate, we quiet the mind. That is the most important thing to do for any kind of telepathy, healing work, anything like that. We have to create a space for what I would call the divine. Some would call it Holy Spirit, some would call it Source. We co-create, and if within ourselves, if we generate the energy internally by using our imagination, that is the first step. We also can ground ourselves through our feet down to the earth, and we can also connect through our crown chakra up to the heavens or the universe or whatever, makes us feel at best. We can draw energy in from both the earth and from the universe. We can mix it within the heart chakra and quiet the mind and send that energy down your arms and through your hands. And when you go like this, you can actually feel the energy between your hands. You can actually feel it. And as you work with it, you could also include crystals if you want. Um, and as you work with it, you start to feel it. You form it into a ball. And that ball, you can then take it and put it into your own heart for your own healing. Or that ball, you can even take it and pass it on to another person through their heart chakra. But you can even take it and pass it through the internet, through Wi-Fi. because there's no time and space. We can send that energy out. We can heal the people like on Facebook who say, I'm having a really bad time. Can you send me a healing? Can you pray for me? You can send that energy to them and help them. And the more you practice, the better it gets. But I've written down here to teach healing techniques in more detail in an upcoming episode of Aliens and Angels. Next week, I have a guest called oh gosh, what's his last name? Tyler. Anyway, Tyler, shoot. I think Tyler Scott is coming on, and Tyler and I are going to talk about how all of this is possible. He's actually worked out the math and the physics on how all of this is possible. So I know you're going to want to come back next Sunday and see my discussion with him. Then Darkholm says, that's awesome. Thanks, Karen. I look forward to that future episode. You're a great teacher. Much love. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very, very kind of you. And like I said, I really appreciate it. Before I started my doing lives, I kind of wondered if anybody was out there. I know I have some views, I have some subscribers. I'm still a very small channel. But it's really nice seeing the comments from you folks and getting your input, and it's lovely. And I know it also improves the show. So this is going out through the Forbidden Knowledge News Network on all audio platforms. Y'all can go and download it too if you want to. And it's also going to be available as a replay on Odyssey and Telegram and various platforms. And of course, it's live also on YouTube, Rumble, and X. And if y'all feel like it, come and join me on Wednesday for the Quantum Guide Show. I'd love to have you. And that, I guess, is that. Just thank you so much. I love you all very, very much. I appreciate you all very, very much. I hope you have the best week ever. Take care, and bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment. And please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.